YouTube, and welcome to Cyprime Productions. I'm here to help enhance your tabletop gaming experience. If you're new to this channel, I primarily cover Paizo tabletop role-playing games like Pathfinder and Starfinder. So, Paizo's new book, the Remastered Guns and Gears, is out. Now, I know there's some controversy. Some people hate that they're putting out a new book with a lot of old stuff in it. I'm not here to comment on that. Remember, if you bought the PDF copy of the original Guns and Gears, this one should be free. If you're mad about it, go complain to Paizo. Yelling at me will do nothing, guys. Seriously, let's keep things civil, okay? So, I've had some time to look over this book, and I'm going to talk about some of the changes to the inventor and gunslinger, but remember, I'm just one guy, and I may have missed or misunderstood something. Now, the way this video is going to work is that I'm going to briefly talk about the pre-remaster version of the class before talking about the changes. That way we can all be on the same page about what happened. Then I'll do a final thoughts section at the end. Starting off with gunslingers. Now, the thing everyone knows about gunslingers is that they are kinda like fighters. Both start with expert proficiency and eventually get up to legendary in some weapons. For gunslingers, they start off at expert with all simple and martial firearms and crossbows, and get up to legendary in those weapons. The gunslingers' big thing they had pre-remaster was called singular expertise. This said that their crossbows and firearms did an additional 1 damage flat. The thing was, this was a circumstance bonus to damage, so it competed with other things like bonuses to damage from sniping duo. The other major thing about singular expertise was that their proficiency with any other weapon group could not equal or exceed their proficiency with crossbows or firearms. Moving on, gunslingers also had, and in fact still have, a subclass. Each subclass focused on a different style of gunfighting, like fighting with a single firearm and a melee weapon in your other hand, 2 pistols, a big honking firearm that you ran right into the thick of things with, or a big firearm that you sniped people with. There were a lot of ins and outs of these subclasses, but they've all been tweaked. Pre-remaster, each subclass got you a few things. To start off with, each subclass got a thing to do at the start of combat that let them draw their weapon and do something else. They also got a special kind of reload that let them do one thing as they reloaded, and they unlocked more abilities as they leveled up. The new subclasses do all of this, by the way, but some of these abilities have gotten slightly better. The remaster has changed some things around a bit. First of all, singular expertise is gone. That weird proficiency thing isn't needed anymore because of how the new weapon familiarity system thing works. It's hard to explain. I'll put it on screen now so you can pause the video and read about it if you want. Another thing that changed is now gunslingers are better with gun or crossbow combination weapons. That is to say, weapons that can switch from a firearm or crossbow to a melee weapon. If they wield such a weapon, they use their firearm or crossbow proficiency to hit, even if the weapon is in melee mode. That lets them get up to legendary in a lot of weapon proficiencies, and might actually allow them to make use of the Lancer, this absurd crossbow lance thing that is just terrible, but I love it for some reason. Moreover, now all non-repeating crossbows deal an additional 2 precision damage, not just +1, whereas non-repeating firearms do +1d4 precision damage. This is mostly a good thing, though it is now precision damage, so it doesn't work on like oozes and such. It's no longer a circumstance bonus, so it doesn't complete with those bonuses though. Also, this damage scales up to +3 and +1d6 respectively at level 13. Now there is a caveat. This bonus damage does not apply to repeating crossbows or firearms like it used to, because presumably you'll be firing off more shots with those weapons. It's a trade-off, and my friend who made an orc gunslinger with a barricade buster will be bummed. But I think it's a fair trade-off. Some of the subclasses got quality of life upgrades. The drifter gunslinger, for example, is meant to be a Clint Eastwood gunslinger shooting and punching people in close combat. Anyway, they no longer trigger reactions when doing their special reload with their pistol. Also, I think, maybe unintentionally, the best way to play a drifter is now to be wielding 2 combination weapons, like maybe 2 trigger brands, one in melee mode and one in ranged mode. This lets you use your legendary proficiency with both shooting and stabbing. Another slight buff is the sharpshooter used to be able to only do their thing in the first round of combat. Now it's the first time they take a shot. It's a minor improvement, but your sniper no longer gets hosed if they have to take a round setting up. Another big thing is that the munition crafter feat is now just better. Basically, it lets gunslingers who take this feat manufacture alchemical ammunition and bombs for free a few times a day, which is nice and works a lot better than it used to. Finally, they added a new feat to the Spell Shot class archetype. This is a gunslinger class archetype, so you have to take it as your first level gunslinger, and then you have to spend a second level class feat to get the dedication, all that stuff. Anyway, now it has a feat that lets you effectively spell strike with your gun at any range increment. It is a 3-action activity, so doing it every round will be a problem unless you can find a way to do a free reload, but it is still pretty cool. Final thoughts on the gunslinger? A lot of these improvements may seem minor, but they could have huge knock-on effects. For example, guns and crossbows doing more damage can help with the lack of damage boosters on most ranged characters. The biggest problem most people have with ranged character builds is that they generally don't add a static modifier to damage, or at least not a big one. That is to say, take a fighter with a greatsword. They add their strength to damage, which is up to an additional plus 7 damage at higher levels. Thrown weapons can also add this damage, but composite bows only add half their strength modifier, so maximum of plus 3, and crossbows and firearms add nothing. But now in the hands of a gunslinger, these weapons add plus 2 and plus 1d4 respectively, and there's a feat that bumps the crossbow damage up to plus 3 in certain circumstances. Firearms are also able to get a bonus from the kickback trait if they have it for a total of plus 2 to 5 damage per shot. And that's not even counting the extra damage you can get from alchemical ammunition that you can make for free with a feat. So yeah, these guys can keep up in the damage race now. They may not be doing as much damage as a fighter, but it's in the same ballpark at least. Also, the Drifter Gunslinger, which is meant to be in the thick of things, shooting guns and point-blank range stabbing people, they no longer trigger reactive strike when reloading their guns, which is great for them. Also, they can actually hit people in melee now because their melee weapon, if it's a combination weapon, uses their higher proficiency bonus to hit with it. Moving on to the inventor, there are a lot of changes here too. First of all, pre-remaster in general, they had 3 things that made them unique. Firstly, they had their subclass called Innovations, which was a special invention that only they could build or use. This comes in the form of a specially made weapon, a specially made suit of armor, or a clockwork companion. The armor had one of 2 base statistics, basically either being leather armor or breastplate, but at level 1 you could give it a special ability from a list. If you chose weapon, you had to choose the base statistics of a simple or martial weapon, but also got a special ability from a list. If you had a clockwork companion, it again had base stats, but you also got 1 modification you could apply at level 1, and the clockwork companion had generally comparable stats to like an animal companion. Of course, inventors could give their innovations newer and more powerful abilities as they leveled up. The second thing they had was overdrive. In combat, they could make a crafting check to make some gizmos and doohickeys they had on their person aid them in combat. This meant that they did more damage. If they critically succeeded, they added their intelligence bonus to damage with all strikes. A success was half their intelligence bonus to damage, failure nothing, and critical failure meant that the gizmos exploded and the inventor took their level in fire damage. Oh, and if they overdrived and had a clockwork companion, then their clockwork companion also did the same bonus damage that they did. The thing was, you could keep overdriving over and over again, hoping to get that critical success. It was a great third action to use instead of attacking a third time in a round and probably missing. The last thing inventors, pre-remaster inventors, had was unstable actions. If an action was unstable, then after you did it, you had to roll a d20. If the die roll beat a 15, then nothing bad happened and the inventor could continue doing unstable actions. If the result of the die was 14 or lower, the innovation became run down, out of tune, and required the inventor to retune it over the course of 10 minutes before they could use any unstable actions again. If the die roll was a 1, they took fire damage equal to their level as the thing backfired. Inventors could pick up unstable actions with feats, but all inventors started off with 1, which was making their innovation spew fire, basically doing a fireball all around them for a good chunk of damage, effectively their level d6 fire damage. Now, some people disliked unstable actions, but I think of them as a focus spell with a 25% to just refund your focus point once you used it. In that light, they're pretty cool. Anyway, new inventors have changed up a bit, like I said. Firstly, all that damage equal to your level thing has become damage equal to half your level in fire damage, which is basically nothing. In fact, it is fire damage, so if your inventor has typical fire resistance, such as being a desert elf, you take no damage at all. Also, armor inventors now have the best armors in the game. An armor inventor can effectively get leather armor with a +2 item bonus to AC instead of +1, or effectively breastplate with a +5 AC instead of +4. This makes their AC, if their dexterity is maxed out, as good as heavy armor without the -10 status penalty to speed, so that's a great upside. And remember, they can add cool abilities to their armors like energy resistances, bonuses to athletics checks, or speed boosts. Weapon inventors similarly got a boost. They can now choose a level 0 advanced weapon as their base weapon and treat it as a martial weapon for proficiency purposes. Notice it does not say common. This means you could theoretically choose any advanced weapon if it was a level 0 weapon to become proficient in and use it. Now, they don't get a cool ability for their weapon at level 1 if they choose the advanced weapon route, but they basically get a free weapon proficiency, so it all works out. Plus, it's still their innovation, so they can do things like explode it, use overdrive, and they can get cool abilities later on. Also, a bunch of these cool abilities that they can get, called enhancements by the way, Reddit user Kalalu Noodles, that is how that's pronounced by the way, compiled a list of them. I'll put the changes on screen now. Oh, and if the inventor fails that overdrive check but doesn't critically fail it, their strikes now still do an additional 1 damage, but it does have to be fire damage. At higher levels, the chance of critically failing that crafting check are pretty low, and it's nice that you'll still get something out of a failure. +1 damage and the ability to try again next round is better than no extra damage. Another boost is, if the inventor is legendary in crafting, which they automatically are at level 15, then their weapon can continue to do unstable actions on a die roll of 13 or higher, not 15 or higher. Finally, some inventor feats got upgraded. For example, dual form weapon, that's this feat that lets you transform your weapon from one form to another, used to not let you transfer weapon runes between the forms, and now it does. There's a lot of little buffs like that. Final thoughts on the inventor? I mean, solid buffs here. They now have what many would argue is the best armor option in the game, and they now have the easiest access to advanced weapons of any ancestry and class. Dueling Sword, Falcata, Tanchel Chakram, Barricade Buster, now any ancestry can get them even if your GM enforces the common, uncommon, rare requirements. Sure, they lose out on their first level enhancements, but like I said, you're essentially getting a free weapon proficiency feat instead and access to that weapon. Also, Inventor is now a great multi-class archetype to take. It does require a +3 intelligence, which is a bit steep, but with just the dedication, you can grab the armor innovation and get that super leather or super breastplate armor, which, like I said, even without the modifications, are the best armors in the game, in my opinion. As for the final thoughts on the whole book, listen, I cannot tell you if you should buy it or not. Some people don't like that it's not full of new material. Some people love that their beloved gunslinger is getting a power boost. If you want to buy it or not, that is a you decision. What I can say is that there is undoubtedly a boost, and it is not an unreasonable one. Gunslingers and inventors now have a power level more on lines with fighters or clerics. Are they as good as those classes? Probably not, but they're playing in the same league now, at least in my opinion. Lastly, here at the end, I want to take a second to talk about some common thoughts about these classes and maybe dispel them. First of all, a lot of people dislike gunslingers because they don't like firearms in their medieval fantasy game. Now I'm sorry, that's silly. The first real-world arquebuses started appearing in the Ottoman Empire in the 1460s, whereas the rapier is credited with being invented nearly 80 years later. Yes, the arquebus is older than the rapier, and no one is complaining about rapiers in their game. But okay, you don't want your game to have firearms. Fair enough. But the thing most people forget is a gunslinger doesn't have to use a firearm. You can make a crossbowman just fine. The arbalest is a D10 weapon with reload 1, and it does additional damage if the opponent is off guard. Or, with unconventional weaponry or Konrasu weapon familiarity, you could treat the Ta launcher as a martial weapon, and that reload 1 crossbow does D10 damage, is deadly D10, and can do piercing, slashing, or bludgeoning at the press of a button. Great options for any gunslinger. Regarding the inventor, I've gotten a lot of pushback about me promoting switch hitter builds. These are builds that can do okay in both melee and ranged combat. But here's where the inventor really shines, I think. If they grab a finesse combination weapon like an explosive dog slicer, they can use their dexterity to hit in melee or at range and use overdrive to deal their intelligence to damage. Or, if they're a weapon inventor, they can take the level 4 feat dual form weapon and have a weapon that can transform from a rapier to an arbalest, and it still does their intelligence bonus to damage. Is it perfect? No, but I've seen it in action and it's surprisingly versatile and decently effective. But what do you think? Do you have any comments, questions, concerns? If so, drop a comment below, but remember to be civil. Also remember, I've made third-party content like my NPC Omnibus, a book with over 30 NPCs from levels 1 to 10. Finally, be sure to like and subscribe. That tells not only me, but also YouTube that you like this kind of content and would like to see more. And until next time, thank you, good luck, and happy gaming!